Hello everyone. So today I'm very excited. I have a lady with me who's got multi-talent, who's really multi-talented. She is the managing director of Blossom Kochhar group of companies. She's a painter, she's a potter. She's also helped a lot of people being a grief whisperer, also a restaurateur and doing amazing initiatives under Kochhar Foundation. So doing so many things, and it's truly inspiring. Welcome, Samantha, to this new episode of mine. To begin with, I want to talk a little bit on your early life. I know you're a second generation entrepreneur, but your early life and how did you get into the venture, your family venture, a little bit on that.
Thank you so much, Siddhant, for having me. And I've gone through so many of your podcasts, and I'm very happy just to be here because I think it's amazing that you're getting so many women, powerful and inspiring people on your podcast. Um, to start with, I am the second generation. Of course, the company, the Blossom Culture Group, was founded by my parents, and I'm the second generation. And of course, the third generation has also stepped in, my son, who's 28 years old. But I think when I started in the hair and beauty profession, I was just 11 years old. And I'm a trained hairdresser since the age of 11. And I learned every aspect of the industry. It was something that you learn from grassroots. And so I entered the hair industry. I went into doing working in movies, in fashion events, not only in India, but globally also. And I think there was a large span of my career where I was teaching people on this profession, on hairdressing. And then when my father passed away, that's when I became the managing director and I took over the Blossom Culture group of companies. So yes, from being at 11, being initiated into the industry, and I never only worked with my mother. I was working at with different productions, and you really get put down to Mother Earth when you work for other people. So yes, that's been my that's how I came from 11 years now being the managing director
Okay.
of the group.
Also, I want to know, leading one of the biggest cosmetic brands in India. So, I'm sure, everything was not a smooth run, even when you took over. There were a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles coming your way, learning different kind of roles, to fit in your own group. How did you manage all that? How did you bring out the positive side out of you and, started running the business so well?
It was not easy because I came from a complete creative background. Like if you really, you enter, I was working in movies like with Meera Nair. I was in Europe, India, fashion. And then when my father passed away, it was just within 4 hours, I was made to take over and sit in a business position. And that was, I think, the toughest because from an absolute creative educationist background, I was, pushed into a position where I was handling men. And the first few months was very, I must say, traumatic because I knew how to read balance sheets, but, you know, it, um, it was difficult because everyone kept telling me only one thing. Now you're stepping into the man's world and you need to, it's the business world. And you have to dress like this and you have to talk like this and you have to be like this. And then you enter the world and you actually realize at some level, um, I was dealing with men who just wouldn't accept and expect a woman at the position that I had taken over.
Right.
Um, and now my company has 50-50% men and women, but in the
Mhm.
beginning it was more men. It was a more male oriented. And yes, it was tough because I didn't know the basics of
Right.
business. And my mom has been my teacher, my biggest critic, and also, as I believe in my spiritual practice, we choose the parents we are born to
Right.
because they somewhere, there's life lessons that we learn together. And she was, every time I would fall and every time I'd be pushed down in business, she was there picking me up and say, dust and walk forward,
Yeah.
dust and walk forward. So yes, I've had a very strong backbone as my mother.
Okay.
My father, even though he passed away, I just still feel him around. And when I cross my milestones, I look up and I thank him for what all he's taught me. So yes, it was tough, very tough, but not something that I'm now sad about. I'm glad. I think I got all that dished out on my plate because somewhere, universe knew I could take it on.
Mm. No, and I think, it's also the willpower. I think you've got a very strong willpower to probably learn and, come up the ladder in that way, because as you completely rightly said, even I'm actually from Bombay, shifted to Calcutta, and I was just finishing my education, and that was a time, due to personal reasons, my whole family had to move from Bombay to Calcutta. So it was tough for me also to join a family legacy business where I had no knowledge about. I had to start from the ground level. So I completely understand also, and really admire your journey. I wanted to also know what got you into writing. You've written your first book, the Aribada, The Arrival. What was that all about? Would you like to share some insights with the viewers watching today, and where your book is also available, if you could tell them?
So then I must confess that in school, I failed in English most of the time, even though my mom's Eurasian, I come from a mixed lineage, my mom being English and my father being Indian. My English spellings were horrendous. I did not, I still don't know the difference between there and there. I have to keep looking up, and I don't know when to put full stops and when to put commas. But when I went through my spiritual practice, and I would not say awakening as much as, you get into a very deep practice. At some point, there is a very strong inner voice that gets developed. Some call it intuition, some call it, connection to the divine, some call it connection to your guides.
Mm,
But there was a point where, um, I was urged and told, and I was a little flabbergasted because honestly, as I said, I'm a good storyteller. Like, I would only tell stories to my son. There was no one else I would tell stories to when he was growing up. I've been a single mom since he was 5 years old, and I think the stories were the only thing that kept us both entertained. To
yeah,
and So when I asked, I said, what is it that I have to do? They said, there's a change that's going to come. And this book needs to be written. And I said, I don't know. The only story I knew that I used to make up this fictitious character was for my son was this little turtle called Ollie. And he used to
okay,
go on these adventures. And I
right.
said, that's the only thing. So he said, just let's take that and we'll tell you the story.
Mm,
I used to pray for like my prayers are slightly intense practice, and I used to get out of that, and then I used to just take a piece of paper and pen, and I used to jot down whatever the first thought that used to come into my mind. And I must confess, there was a point when, when the story started shaping up. um, and people used to ask, my editor used to ask me, a very good friend of mine, Sangeeta Jain, she used to ask me, what's going to happen next? I said, for God, I do not know.
mm,
When I get into prayer, I'll tell you after 2, 3 hours. But that is how the book came through. And, Siddhant, the most interesting thing is that when I finished the book, I even asked who is going to read this book, because and the only thing they said, the person who needs this book will read this book. Who needs to heal will read this book. Like I told you, the story finds its
yeah,
reader,
yeah,
and who is destined for this book will read it. You don't have to bother about who's going to read or not read. You just have to put it out. So I went to many publishers, everyone refused. And finally, when Rupa agreed to give it, they told me only one thing. No, if you have any other publisher who's bought the rights, we would like to take it from them. And I'm thinking in my head with another friend of mine, no one even thought to, I think, even take this book. So I was very happy that they took it, and it's reached where it's reached. And when I hear people send back their comments about it, now I understand, sometimes we try it as our mind tries to find reason and a perfect explanation why something has to be written, why I wrote it, why. But when I see the healing and when I see the tears, I see the joy, I see people writing back to me and saying, I wanted to commit suicide and someone handed me a book and things changed.
Yeah.
I lost my father and I read your book and I got the strength to
Right.
get up and start walking. Then, Siddhant, I realized that, you know, I don't think I need to question.
Yeah.
And for me, it was also a learning journey because while I was writing this book, I evolved as a person.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we ourselves as humans do not know, you know, how powerful and how gifted and how connected we are to the divine. We just
Yeah.
have to allow the magic to flow through us.
True.
But we don't do that because we let the mind come in.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, you failed in school. You don't even know the difference about, where to put the comma and where to do that. But then when the book got written, there were so many people that slowly started would just come. I would say, I don't know who's going to edit the book.
Yeah.
My friend said, I'll edit it for you. I don't know who's going to publish it. The publisher came forward. Who's going to read it? And when I went into Amazon, I have 150 people saying, it changed our lives.
Wow.
So let's believe in magic.
And I think that is,
I was just the, as I say, I was just the, the medium through which something had to
no,
come
and I think
forward.
it's so good, when people, their lives are changing for the better when they read your book, that itself is a big self-satisfying thing, I would say. So totally kudos to you for doing this. And me especially, I love the word Arribada, it's a Spanish word for the arrival. So it's a very lovely name that you've given your book. And really, it's truly inspiring helping people because I also know a lot of people, they come to me, they say, this project is not working, we really failed in this project, we don't have that heart to again, try the same thing again. But I just keep telling them, failure is just a stepping stone. Unless you don't fail, you will not know you're going to succeed. You cannot be disheartened. It's a part of life, like how success is, even failures also a part of your life. So you need to embrace both. So that is what when I also try to tell in from my own mediums to people, and it's truly amazing, that.
I must tell you, Siddhant, what I really like about like even shared with you, I love what you are doing because, um, every human has such an inspiring story.
Yeah,
And we are so busy living our little story, we forget about hearing other people's story.
right,
Sometimes you look at people who, like you have, like your movie stars or your
yeah,
models, or,
yeah,
even me, people have an image about these people, but
right,
they don't see that little, every human has so much vulnerability and so much, there's such a story behind that
yeah,
human, and just bringing that forward. It's not also, I would say, inspiring, but it's humbling.
yeah,
That is my thing. So I love what you're doing because you said inspiring, but I would also more put it, it's so humbling, and it is also, it's humbling to hear people's story, to have the courage to tell your story,
yeah,
as well as also the courage to stand up and say, listen, this is what happened.
yeah.
It's actually a both
Yeah,
two-way
and that
thing
takes also a
happening.
lot of courage and guts, when to speak, speaking out your entire thing. Probably a lot of people who never, who wanted to say something, they used to keep it inside, but now they've started coming out and, talking about their stories, which is truly, truly, nice to hear and inspire other people as well. Samantha, I also want to know, a little bit about the Kochhar Foundation, the amazing initiatives that y'all do under that. So, would you like to share something, about the
Yes, so
foundation?
actually, both my mother and my father had this dream. My father was actually an army officer, and and so I'm an army kid through and
Mhm.
through. And my mother started, she got her first break from the army. She had a little small salon in Wellington when my dad was posted out there and in south of India. And that is how she started her journey. And, when you come from the army background, and from like what I've seen, you see, he was, of course, a paratrooper, and you see people dying for the country.
Right.
Siddhant, it's not that anything
Yeah.
about it's a soldier has a very different, like when I remember when my dad used to go off for war, like, when he was in Sri Lanka and he used to go off for war. And the only thing he used to tell me was, baby, don't cry. Because when I go into war, and I think I'll always want to remember your face
Yeah.
smiling. So, when you say a soldier's wife, soldier's child, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes on both ends. And there somehow comes a spirit where you realize that you need to do something larger. Because, like, when you're becoming a soldier, or you are the wife of a soldier, or you are the daughter of a soldier, you realize your parent or the loved one is doing something much more larger. You're giving up, there's a chance you may lose everything, and the most precious thing
Yeah.
is your life,
Yeah.
to just save people, countries, faceless people, faceless concepts. And my father and mother always wanted to create something when the business was growing, that we want to give back, you know. So the whole thought of giving back, and that, I think that is what was always there. And we did a lot of CSR before also, when she was from war widows to acid victims. And that's when, at one point when my father died, I remember 2 months before he passed away, we used to go to the cancer ward, because he
Yeah.
he was affected by cancer. And we used to see these children, with collapsed heads, and small bloated tummies. And I remember I used to say, Dad, I used to be sad, and I used to say, Dad, you'll get through it. And he used to smile, and he used to point to these children, because at that point he was losing his voice, and he used to point to these children and say, and he used to put his thumb up to these kids. Um, and that, I think that's when he passed away, we first decided to go forward and really look. The doctor said, you need to, cancer is a lifestyle disease, but what you eat, how you live, actually affects. It's like it's like it makes up the whole gamut for a person to get cancer. And we said, my father used to love going through that, and he used to see these children and used to keep. So we said, okay, when he went away, we said, let us start our first CSR, like, official, with the cancer children.
Right.
And we started with that. And my mother changed the formulations of the product so that they become more, really more stringent of how healthy they become on the human and the environment. Because we realized how important it is. It's not about producing a product or a face wash. It is, how it's connected. How will your skin, it goes into your body, it goes out of your body, it goes into the water. People's lives are at stake. And cancer started, and then slowly, when we used to see these children, there was no parks these children had to play in. So we started planting trees. And then from there we decided a few years back that we'll take 1 rupee of every product, and we'll put it into various, and that's how Kochhar Foundation came. And the day Kochhar Foundation came was my father's birthday, actually, last
Mhm.
year. And I think I was very happy.
Yeah,
Very
I
happy.
think it's such a beautiful thought also, from you and your entire family to do this. Um, Also, Samantha, tell me something. I know you've been very spiritual. You've had a nice spiritual life, but what do you think in today's day and age? Where does spirituality stand? And how does people, it's a stressful life for everybody. How do you think, spirituality can help people, especially with stressful lives which they're leading?
Honestly speaking, Siddhant, we can't, sometimes a person, I don't know, I like, through our practice and through my practice, what I come like as a shaman, I would just say one thing, that you don't have just 1 or 20 lives. You may come through 300 to 900 lives on
Yeah.
this, in this loop, as we call it. And every lifetime you learn something, you decide to learn something, you decide to improve yourself, you decide, say, okay, I'm going to learn these lessons, I'm going to, and fine tune myself as a student. I want to experience this, I want to experience loss, I want to experience fame, and you come down and you go through this whole experience, and you go back up. Um, the most important thing that I would, I've just I've just learned one thing is that when someone is not spiritual or doesn't have a spiritual life, we will just tell them, you know, we we sometimes look down upon them, or if they don't have a religious
Mhm.
leaning, we look down. Maybe in another lifetime they had one. We need a
Mhm.
spiritual life is something, yes, it's important, but what a spiritual life actually is, it's just going within and connecting into the divine, understanding understanding the concept of, the light and the dark,
Mhm.
merging and coming as Adi Shakti and moving towards, you know, a high, getting graduated slowly
Mhm.
and steady. So
Mhm.
yes, spiritualism is important. So is some people take and catch up religion to
Mhm.
reach their goals. Some people take in a much more, a universal and a much more, um, non-controversial way of things. So I would just say that yes, spiritualism is important. So is a catching being religious is important, but not to look down on people who don't have that. And yes, in this stressful time, I would only say one thing is that 2025 onwards, there's going to be a large global shift. And if you do not align yourself of becoming a superhuman or elevating the way you think, feel, and addressing issues, um, it's going to be a little difficult. So if you want to catch on to a spiritual practice, or you want to catch on to an energy practice, you want to catch on to, the religion you were born in and say, okay, let me learn more about it, please do, because the time is changing.
Mhm. Also, if I want to know, if you have to give a message to the youth of today, to our next generation, who's going to be the future of our country, uh, and if they also want to come into your field, what are the kind of attributes one must have, especially for the women entrepreneurs, I would say, who really is looking up to you, and you've built such a successful name for yourself. What is the kind of message you would like to give them?
The only two things I'd like to say, I think I shared one something when we had our first initial discussion was, it was a simple thing that as a woman, sometimes when we choose to be born as a woman, often we're made to feel that we're not enough.
Mhm.
Okay. And even though we have experiences, sometimes you're born in a family and you're just treated like the little goddess, daddy's little girl or mommy's little girl, whatever. And then you go out in the world and you're actually shown that you're not enough. You're not as good as a man, or you're not, or you get cheated on by your man, by a younger woman, or whatever happens. And
Mhm.
you're always left with this feeling sometimes that you're not enough. And said it to you, I showed it to you even yesterday that, if it was my younger me and an older me
Mhm.
now, I would actually just say, I'm enough, and that's one thing that I tell the youth is that, cut some slack to yourself,
Mhm.
be kind to yourself. Um, know that you are something so divine and so powerful. And yes, everyone else may be running at a
Mhm.
speed that you may not be running at, but
Mhm.
there's a method in the madness. There's a bigger plan. And so give yourself that time, that respect, and give yourself a chance
Mhm.
to shine.
Mhm.
That's my first thing. And the second thing of being a woman entrepreneur is the other thing. When I entered the industry, I was told that, you're entering the man's world,
Mhm.
business,
Yeah.
so dress like a man. So I had to wear business suits, it was always gray or black. I had to wear these shirts, and I had to, and at one point I just revolted, I must confess. And I was like, there is no way I'm dressing like a man. You
Yeah.
know, business is for any entrepreneur, business is business. It's a sphere
Yeah.
where a man and a woman think. Yes, as a woman, I bring different things onto the table. What a man brings to the table is also very different.
Yeah.
And that is where we have to understand that there was a reason I, as a human soul, chose to be a woman. There are many lessons I have to learn. But when I come into business, I've understood, and I use a term again, the Adi Shakti.
Yeah,
A man and a woman both have the male and the female, and we really, as a businesswoman, you need to bring those two synergically in play when you are working. You can't be too feminine or you can't be too masculine.
yeah,
You just have to work with both of them in synergy, and that is where um, I think we as business women tend to lose the plot a little, because we get carried away with what people say. And
yeah,
so when I started, how did I revolt was that even I come in for a meeting, I'll wear the brightest clothes possible. I
yeah,
love my lipstick. I love my makeup. Um, I like doing up my hair, um, and I think that was where the revolt started. And then now at this age, I just love doing it. It's not that, there was no kind of statement I wanted to make. I just like doing it. I like just like being Samantha.
yeah,
And that is what I think the, entrepreneur has to know is that be yourself,
yeah,
because authenticity is the one thing that any entrepreneur requires. You need to be authentic with yourself first. Is this me? Am I going to create the change that I vision? Is this really, am I being fair? Am I being mean to this man because he's a man?
mhm,
You know, have I got this chip on my shoulder? I need to start being authentic. And that's when we start as entrepreneurs and leaders being authentic, we create a sea change because people follow us.
right. But I think that's a wonderful message. You've especially, it's truly inspiring for me because, I'm getting inspired, hearing your kind words and, your words of wisdom. So I'm sure everyone watching us also must be so inspired by just hearing you talk. Now comes to a fun section. This is the rapid fire round, just to know you more
Oh God.
personally, to know you more
Am I
personally.
going to get a little gift like that
I'll
thing that
definitely
they
send
do
you
in?
across for sure from Calcutta. Okay, great. So, to begin with, I want to know if you love to cook, which I'm sure you know how to cook, and you must be a great cook. What is your favorite dish that you cook well? And if you had to grade yourself without no cheating from 1 to 10, how would you grade yourself as well?
So if I have to cook, what I like to
Yeah,
cook, yeah.
yeah.
I cook coconut rice
Okay,
very well.
okay, great.
It's like ghee rice, but it's like a thing. So I'll cook coconut rice very well. And if I have to rate it, I would rate it as 8 on 10
Oh, wow. Not being modest.
because I know how to cook it very well.
Okay, great. What is your favorite kind of genre of music which you really like, which you can probably listen at work, at home, and, it helps you de-stress. So what is that kind of music which you go to?
Honestly, I listen to music. I do like country music because I grew up with it.
Okay.
I something that when I was a young girl, I still am, but when little more younger than this.
Yeah.
But my uncle used to my great uncle. That's my mother's uncle, and of course my great uncle. He had the most amazing voice, Uncle Pat.
Okay.
And in the morning, when he used to make our coffee as a young child, I remember on the farm, I used to live on a coffee estate, my grandparents' coffee estate. I knew, it was time to wake up because he used to start singing hymns,
Hmm.
of course, and then it used to be country music. And by another 30 minutes down, it was all the naughty songs possible. But
Okay.
yes, it's my child. I grew up, hearing country music and old English music, like Jim Reeves, and so yeah,
Basically
that's
the old
something.
school. Basically the old school.
Yeah,
Not
old
really.
school music. So
Yeah.
I must confess, when I feel when I've had like a real shit day, then I go and I'll hear something really old and stupid.
Who's been your all-time favorite crush?
On men, people, what books,
On
animals,
men,
what?
on men. Who's your all-time favorite crush? It can be a celebrity, it can be from
Um,
Hollywood, Bollywood.
I have actually I have so many,
But that one name
but
which you,
Omar Sharif,
okay. What is your current favorite read?
my current favorite reel,
Yeah,
dream or reel.
read.
Oh God, Siddhant, you're asking me. I have this fascination, by the way, with ducks.
Okay.
So if the duck walks funny and be dressed up in different things, I must confess, when I go onto the internet, I see things that are absolutely brainlessly stupid. Dogs, ducks, cats. And
Okay.
when I look at the feed, sometimes when my son takes my phone and says, "Let me see your feed," which is very intrusive, he hands it back after 2 seconds and says, "Who sees so many ducks?" I'm like, fascinating. And I have this cute little thing that I keep seeing recently. It's this cat that invites the chicken to have a beer and then cooks it. I'm like, this is exactly like the story, these stories that we used to hear when we were growing up.
Wow.
I don't think fairy tales are very enhancing for children. Someone's killing someone, snow, everything. Like, what is it? The wolf has to eat up the Red Riding Hood. So we always have had this, growing up. But
Okay.
I must confess one thing. Can I tell you what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love,
sure,
really
sure.
love, is Tom and Jerry.
That's my all-time favorite cartoon as well.
Meaning, I can watch Tom and Jerry.
I can watch it till today. That kid inside me just doesn't want to stop. If it's there anywhere, I will leave everything and sit there and watch
And I think I'm still Tom and Jerry. Sometimes I'm Tom and sometimes I'm Jerry because all the time I want to whack people. But
it.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want to also know, like, what is that one thing which you've never dared to do, which you'd always want to try it, but it can be in any adventure, which you want to dare, but you've never done it.
Dare to do. Um, I must confess, I've done crazy stuff. I've bungee jumped to, I've climbed the Mont Blanc Glacier.
Oh,
I've walked God knows how many kilometers, 800 kilometers. But
okay.
I have, I want to climb a mountain,
Okay.
and one of those tall, icy mountains. I don't know which one, but yeah, I want to do that.
Okay, great.
So that's
So,
something that I want to do.
So great. So that comes to the end of the episode. I'm so thrilled to have you with me, Samantha. It was so nice just hearing your journey. It's been truly incredible, and I'm sure everyone watching us today would be so inspired by, your journey. So I really thank you so much for taking out the time. Truly humbled to have this candid chat with you, and I'm wishing you all the very best for all your future endeavors. Hope you keep shining, keep smiling, spreading positivity, and helping all the people who need your help through your book and through as also being a grief whisperer. That is something which is truly amazing that you're doing. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Siddhant. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so much for having me, and just, just thank you.